tells us he had a very good tournament, most of all. And he certainly had the potential to win top tournaments for a long time, and he has won a couple of them. And to be able to show his best level at the candidates is very impressive.
Of course, I'm very happy to win against one of the strong chess players in the world, also one of the young, maybe future world champion. But of course, it was not easy match for him. We play a good match, we made interesting games. But okay, I think from the openings he got bad positions. And I think in the first day and also second day, every time he got a very bad position from the openings.
There is no bishop c5, and after rook e7 it just looks like an extra exchange for black now.
Yeah, I mean, I blundered it, you know, but I mean, yeah, and rook e7, oh my god, yeah.
He clearly blundered it. Did you see that? Did you see his expression?
I saw it. I mean, okay, now he's going crazy because he might just lose this game where he was, yeah, he has to, I mean, okay, he has activity to fight for a draw, but this is not completely crazy.
So this is the last day of the final, where Hikaru Nakamura needs to strike back against the world champion Magnus Carlsen. Will he be able to do so? Well, let's take a look at the first game of the last final day. So what we have here is a Nimzowitsch defense here with bishop b4. Quite a solid opening, which is the reason why the world champion opts for this line. Queen c2 has been the main move for a long time. What it does is that it simply protects the knight. So when black takes on c3, we can take back to the queen, avoiding an inferior pawn structure. Takes bishop g5, white pins the knight, h6, bishop h4. It's always quite a human response to play h6 whenever a bishop is placed on g5. c5, natural move, seizing the center. He takes c5, bishop e6, defending the pawn on d5, e3, castles, knight f3, knight d7, knight d4. Not anything particular has really happened so far, except for the fact that black has a weak pawn in the center that could become quite weak in the endgame. An isolated pawn, that is. But in return, black controls the square on e4. Bishop takes c5, bishop d3. Bishop takes d4 is a rather interesting choice from Magnus. It gives away the bishop pair, but in return, he no longer has an isolated pawn. Takes queen b6, queen d2, a subtle way of defending the pawn, because if Magnus now takes the pawn, we can play bishop h7 check and then take the queen. And now Magnus goes for knight e4, an interesting choice as well. Bishop takes, pawn takes. And why can't I take with the knight, you might ask, and that is the fact of bishop d5 and then followed by rook e8, and it's getting quite scary for Magnus. So, for Nakamura, I mean. So Nakamura plays d5, bishop f5, and then goes for castles. Queen g6 and d6. And what Nakamura has achieved is that he has a very, very strong pawn on d6, and this pawn is extremely strong and might end up deciding the game if black is not careful. Knight e5, bishop g3, avoiding the fork on f3, rook e8, knight b5, we're gonna be jumping to c7 if we can, rook d8, queen c3, moving out of the pin, and attacking the knight. The knight moves. Knight c7, there you go. What I just said, rook f8 and rook d1. Defending this pawn on d6, which has become extremely powerful. h5, queen c5, improving the position of the queen, as we can now soon start pushing our pawns with b4, b5, and it could become rather dangerous. Rook d7, and there you go, b4, a6, a4. Gonna play b5 soon, chase away the knight on c6. So Magnus decides to go for counterplay after e3, f takes e3, and bishop e4. There are now some tricks of h4 when Nakamura cannot take because of queen takes g2 mate. So Nakamura goes for rook d2, and that is actually a mistake due to tactical purposes. And it's because Magnus now has the chance of playing d6, with the idea of being queen takes b6, rook b8, and then take on b4 next. Quite a good move, but Magnus did not find the move. He played king h7, sort of a natural move if you do not know what to do, improving the king's position. b5, chasing away the knight, takes. The knight has to move. The knight moves to d5. Now I can start jumping to e7 if I want to, or even b6, trapping the rook on d7. Knight e6, attacking the queen. Queen c4. And Magnus goes for the move h4. Magnus just throws all of his pieces against Nakamura's king. Knight e7, a very strong move, which keeps the pawn on d6. Queen g4. Bishop e5. Knight g5. And now the position has become extremely tricky. Now Magnus wants to play knight h3, followed by bishop takes g2, winning the queen on c4. So Nakamura plays bishop f4. But this is a massive error from Nakamura. It was way better to play rook f4 with the idea of knight h3 and then king h1. And if Magnus takes the rook, I can take on e4 first, and then take on f4 with a completely winning position as I'm up material. But after knight g5, bishop f4, Magnus is now winning due to the fantastic move rook takes d6, a brilliant move, because I cannot take with the bishop, I cannot take with the rook, because if I take with the rook, I'm mated on g2, and if I take with the bishop, I once again get this tactic against me with knight h3 followed by bishop takes g2. So Nakamura is forced to move the rook when Magnus has knight h3, for example, and a very powerful attack, for example f5, and black's pressure is just far too strong. But instead, Magnus played knight h3 check, king h1, and now f5. Keep. Magnus is still in the game. Queen e6 attacking the rook, knight takes f4, and this is now a huge mistake from Magnus. It was much better to simply move the rook, and the position remains very complicated, but the evaluation is equal. But knight takes f4, rook takes f4, the rook moves, threatening to checkmate Nakamura. Nakamura sees that, of course, and plays king g1, rook a1 check, and then rook f1. But what happens next is that the pieces are traded, and Nakamura's passed pawn on d6 will end up deciding the game, as it is simply far too strong. And after queen g6, king h8, queen h5, Nakamura got a desirable endgame here. And the thing is that Magnus cannot take the rook because he will soon be mated after queen g8 and queen h8. So after bishop takes g2, Nakamura simply played king e2, and after bishop f1, king d1, there will be no more checks. Thus, Nakamura is completely winning. So Nakamura strikes back, but unfortunately for him, it wasn't enough, and Magnus ended up winning the New In Chess Classic.
And anything?
I think the last final remaining chance now is to push some pawns in front of the white king and pray and just hope that Magnus gets nervous. It's not going to work. Black just doesn't have any pieces around the white king to create those threats, but you have to at least remind your opponent that they have some stuff to worry about. And okay, Nakamura playing a defensive move. Nakamura offers a draw with that move, and Magnus accepts. Magnus wins the tournament.
Magnus Carlsen is the winner of the New In Chess Classic, the first tournament he wins in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. finally, the world champion is a winner on the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. Very mellow here. And there he looks up. All right. Teasing us a little bit there, but there we have the reaction. Wow, huge congratulations to Magnus Carlsen, the winner. Finally, we have to use the word finally.
Yeah, I mean, it was really what we wanted to see. We